Okay everybody, so I haven't made a video in the last few days, so I figured I'd make an update video here to tell you what I've been up to. Mostly I've been working on backend stuff again. Every so often I will stop making content and do this, where I'll focus on the backend quantity of voltage. In this particular case, I've actually gone in and completed the JSON handling for recipes, JSON handling for items, renders, a few different things here. Now the code's pretty boring to look at, because it's just loading the file in, parsing the file, converting the file into data. But I'll show off, let's launch the game real quick here so I can show what I've been working on in game. But I'll talk over a few different things. Well, one, I've actually been working on the fluid handler mod here. I don't know if I've showed this off yet. I guess I have a few errors here. I've also been working on my game here, which is what you're seeing there, is I separated it out to its own little project so I don't get distracted while working on it. And I forgot to remove it from this side because I went in and added OpenGL and a whole bunch of nice things to start learning how to do this. Now Minecraft does contain these same libraries, which is the reason I picked to use it, is that I'm familiar with Minecraft, therefore when if I go to make my own game, I can just use the same knowledge base. But we'll get rid of that real quick and that won't error out, and we'll hit run. Um, and I'll go back to talking on this stuff. So yeah, I've been working on Fluid Handler. This is one thing that I've been focused on. It's going to be an independent modular that's going to be updated over several Minecraft versions to handle anything fluid related. So that's fluids that go into machines and recipes and stuff, and then that's fluids that can be placed in the world, and then bucket containers. Now, ingeniously, what I've done for my containers for all my fluids is rather than making a new item for each one, like a lot of mods do, and then they register all those items, and each of those items has one fluid per item usually, I've created an MBT-based item that can allow you to store any amount of fluid and any type of fluid. So you can literally stick stuff into this, and the entire thing is set up so that way if I want to get a new container, say if I want to make like IC2 capsules, I just make something called a bucket material that then defines itself as a capsule, then that renders looking as a capsule and does other things to make it work. Wooden buckets is actually starting to use this. Cacti bucket's going to be updated here next, and the gas can mod, which I made for commission, also uses the same code. Yet they all look different, they all function slightly different, but the code backend is the same for all of them, which is the ideal. It's the reason why I made a little separate mod for this rather than building it directly in a Volts engine, is that these are lightweight mods that can be installed with the single block mod series and handle content. Eventually the Helm Bucket mod will use this. Reason why I haven't mentioned porting it over yet is that if we go into the textures here, we have textures for all the fluids. The code is designed that if a fluid is not existent in the texture list, it will try to make one for it. We're going to actually do some really cool code to get that to work even better. But the reason Helm Bucket doesn't use this is this texture doesn't quite match up perfectly with the Helm Bucket code. But I have a solution for that. That's where I was talking about there's some things we can do to make it work. Is that we're going to end up doing a cutout inside the code where we'll take a full block render, because every time you register a fluid, you also register an icon to go with it to render that fluid inside machines and stuff. That icon is usually a full-size cube of usually what looks like flowing water or something that's been recolored. Taking that, I can create a cutout that would make it look like this shape here, but not just this shape. I can make it look like the Helm Bucket's request for what they want stuff to look like and various other things. And we're going to do the same thing with the helmets themselves too. So every mod generally makes their helmets look exactly the same, except they've been recolored or retextured slightly, but the layout's the same. So we're going to do that as well. Moving away from this, because this isn't that important, the JSON system, which is also going to be implemented into the bucket code as well, is what I want to talk about more. So that's what I've been focusing on. I did the recipes, was the first thing I've actually updated here recently, and got the JSON code working for it. This is also for the commission I'm working on, because the client wants a 4x4 recipe handling system for a crafting group, which works out really, really well. The only thing is I didn't want to sit there and manually code recipes every time the client wanted something changed. Instead, I went like, hey, I'm going to be doing this JSON system here anyways for the new update, because one reason why the JSON system exists is when I go to update to new Minecraft versions, I don't want to be changing a whole bunch of code every time I do it. So JSON code, what it allows me to do is I define the data that defines the recipe or the item or the render or whatever is in a text file. That text file does never have to be changed. Instead, all we do is we change the backend that loads the code up, and that's like one file that has to be changed rather than, say, if we had like 200 items, that would be 200 files. There's a huge difference in that, and that's one of the reasons I'm looking into. But let me show you the recipes here. So there's 4 parts of the recipes that we've implemented. There's just a basic recipe straight out. This is a test recipe, of course. It's not a 4x4 grid like for that commission. This is, if people paid attention to Twitter, I posted a screenshot like, hey, I got the recipe system working. It's a stick-to-stick recipe. Simplest thing you can possibly do, but it shows the system works. Now this file is pretty simplistic. You've got your author tag to tell you who this file belongs to. By default, this actually, I'll be changing this to identify the mod, so this will be optional. This will actually come into importance here later when we go to make resource files. So one of the parts of the JSON system I want to get working for the Armory system is that you can build a resource file. And this resource file would go like, hey, I'm a gun file, and the only thing in that file would be a gun, and it would define how that gun works. And you would upload that to Curse, and it would be downloaded. And you can sit there and you can pick each individual gun you want to add to your mod pack rather than get these huge large mods. Although we will implement large mods, which will be a collection of resource packs. So you have your World War I, your World War II, your modern combat. But yes, you got the author, you got the crafting grid recipe definition here. You got the load condition. Right now this is set to dev mode load condition. Not actually used anymore here. It does work. You can set different load conditions like, hey, I want to load only if thermal expansion is loaded or only if IC2 is loaded, which is a really cool thing with this, is this lets us do mod compatibility without having to write special code for that. You tell it what type it is, so this type is shaped. It also supports shapeless, and eventually we'll be doing machine recipes as well. Machine recipes will, of course, be loaded with a different thing. Like this one says crafting grid recipe. You have something that says like macerator recipe or grinder recipe, or just simply say machine recipe, and then your type will be grinder. I haven't coded it out yet, but I'll get to it. You define your output. In this case, we actually specify we want an item from the package Minecraft. That is a stick. Now this package is your domain name. It has to match the mod. And in the case of Minecraft, it literally is Minecraft. But if you were like doing, say, you want to do Volts Engine, it would be Volts Engine. If you want to do ICBM, it would be ICBM. ICBM Classic, what I believe is ICBM C, is what the thing is. You then specify your grid. In this case, the spaces do matter. You can also replace them with dots. It will load exactly the same. I made sure to implement that, as some people have noted when making recipes. It is a little difficult to tell how many spaces you have, so I put the dot implementation in there. We specify this. In this case, it has to be a stick in the very center of the grid. It doesn't have to be specified that way. You actually could replace it with this, and it would work out just the same. In this case, I did the stick in the very center to try to not overlap with other people's recipes. Then you specify your items. Your items are a character. It has to be a single character that then matches in here. You have to make sure that you have an item per entry in here. If you're missing an entry, it will crash. If this grid is messed up in any particular way, it will crash. So the grid, each row has to be the same length. So each comma separates the rows. I'll actually be implementing something slightly different for this here later to make that easier to understand. But they have to be the same length. We have to have the same type of stuff, layout. It'll crash. I won't go over all the things, but when you go to the item, you specify what it is. You specify, we want an item from the package Minecraft, that stick. You can specify block here, you can specify OR name here. OR names also do work up here in the output. These two entries literally use the same exact code to identify. I'll be putting a lot of handling into that here later. There'll be a lot of special cases it'll do for you. MBT will be supported here eventually too. Right now it's not added for the simplistic reason that I don't want to sit there and code up a special object definition. Because if we actually wanted to do this, we would have to go, okay, this is entry here, and this will be like you'll have an item, and you'll go like, the item is item at Minecraft, and then stick, and then of course, if you want to do metadata with this, I forgot to mention, you can do that to do metadata, but if I did it a more proper way, you would then have meta, which would then be your meta value of, say, 1. In JSON, you could actually do it that way. And then we would have our MBT, which would be this large cluster of pretty much a little bit of everything, because we would have to do it this way, and then we would have to do that, and then you'd have your key entries. Say we wanted to do a metadata for a tracker, you would have your key code. This would be like some kind of short value. It would be like 3 to something. Doesn't really matter, but we're going to Control and Z all this so my code doesn't break, as I actually use these for test cases to make sure that the stuff actually works. But we got that. There's recipe replacement, so this is actually used if you want to get rid of a recipe before you add a new one. It's pretty basic. You go your type I want to replace. If you hit remove, it will ignore this code down here. So you have to hit replace if you want to be able to add a recipe afterwards. You then specify I want to remove a grid recipe. There'll be different types added. Right now, grid is the only one supported. Furnace will be added eventually. Machine recipes will be added. A little bit of everything will be added over time. You specify what item you want to remove. In this case, you would also specify meta if you want to remove only meta items, or you can do MBT as well. One warning with removal, they don't work perfectly on modded recipes because modded recipes depend on the crafting grid to identify correctly. If it's a normal recipe, say like I just put a couple items in the crafting grid and outputs, it'll work perfectly fine. If it's a special recipe, like say I want to do tools or rechargeable items or stuff, it's not going to work as well because a lot of the specialty recipes, even ICBM has the same problem. If the recipe requires very special handling, it'll fail. I will add a way to fix that later, but it'll be specific removal, which will be another type in here, which then you actually specify the exact crafting recipe you want to remove by giving essentially this right here as the input, where you specify it's a shape, it's a type, and everything else, and it'll match it exactly up, and it'll remove the recipe. Speaking of this part here, this is the recipe that'll be added afterwards. It literally is the same as this right here. Exact same code runs this one as it runs this one. And then we move on to here. Okay, we got the furnace recipe, same ideal, input, output. XP is an optional thing which isn't in here. Of course, you got your load condition, everything else, and then you got your ore name. Ore name is, you could just specify ore name. Now, one good thing to point out with all these recipes, these can be implemented inside of your item class or your block class or your weapon class or whatever. There's code specially set up to handle these being inside of other objects. If you put an ore name inside of your block class, the name part, or actually not the name, the item part is optional. You don't have to specify that because what it'll do is it'll pre-implement and go like, hey, this ore name is inside of this block class or this ore name is inside of this block meta entry. And that'll pass in and it'll register properly. This one's outside of this as I'm trying to test registering ore names to things for the client's commission as he wants to specify certain things with certain names in order to get the recipes to work. And rather than just manually coding each recipe, you code ore names because ore names make life easier. If we actually go and find his project here, and I go down to his recipe, we got a campfire recipe which goes I want ore name log, ore name rock. There's a layout. Here's the output, which is a campfire block from his mod. Shaped, everything. Pretty straightforward, really easy to work with. You never have to change it once you implement it. That's the beauty of this. And of course I got the ore name in there to specify what the rock is. This actually will end up being changed as this is, I believe there's a mod that drops the rocks for his mod pack. What else do we implement? Okay, so I got the items. I'm still working on these. I just finished some of the code here this morning and yesterday on getting all the stuff to work. But you have an item, specify the name, the mod, and the ID. The mod will eventually be optional here because when the JSON content loader goes to load JSON files, it actually now identifies what mod package it's loading from, and it will use that mod's package to implement this if this is missing. Of course, you'd have add author up here, which is not in there. Here's the render here. This is actually not like a model render as you would think of it. This is actually a texture render. It does support models, but right now I've got this one set into that your state 0, which is your inventory render, is just a texture here. And here's your texture. And this doesn't match the 1.8, 1.9, 1.10, and a 1.11 render system Minecraft has. I will implement that system here later, but this is designed to be more cross-compatible with multiple Minecraft versions than Minecraft's version is meant to be. Because if you go to 1.8 and you use their render system, then 1.9 you have to change it again, and I believe 1.10 tweaks it even slightly more, 1.11 adds some more features into it. So that means you don't have cross-compatibility, you don't have backwards compatibility, which backwards compatibility, for those who are not familiar with the term, means I could take something from a newer version and it'll work in an older version, and I could take something from an older version and put it in a newer version. I think that's forward compatibility in the one. I might get the terms mixed up because I don't use them enough. But it just means that this will, in theory, load in all versions, although I haven't fully tested it or implemented it. As soon as I go to update to 1.8, I will then implement this function in 1.8, and we'll get to see what I have to change. And then I'll do that in 1.9. And when we get it all worked together, then that's when you'll probably see me develop a ton of content for things like the Armory mod, because then I know going forward into new versions, I don't have to redo all these files. Just to show you, there's another one I'm working on here. Actually, that's right here. This is actually a copy from the Armory mod. As you can tell, it still says armory.shotgun. So the JSON render system was actually developed in the Armory mod first for the guns. I have ported it over Volts Engine so we could use it for everything. This is of course an item renderer. You specify your textures down here, then you specify your rotation. There's also a metadata value here for this. That I don't think is actually implemented in the Volts Engine version. I have to tweak it some more. I haven't fully implemented everything yet, of course. But that's it right there for the JSON system. Let's go show off some of the content I've been working on. Now, of course, most of the content I'm working on recently has been commission content, as I've got to pay for bills. Once I get enough money that I know I pay the bills, I'll get back to working on everything else. Although I have started on the Atomic Science update. That'll be being worked on over time here. It won't happen right away. I did knock out, let's say, like 30% of the update required for it. But there's tons of code in there, and this code is from 1.6.4. So not only is it old code, so we're porting a 1.6.4 mod to 1.7, all the dependencies that used to exist for it do not exist anymore because they've been converted to things like Volts Engine. So none of the file names are the same, and some of the content's missing. Like the heat registry is just gone. That's something I have to remake. It was made by Maxwell back in 1.6.4 to replace Cal Klobby's poor implementation of it. So I've got to remake that. But I think I've already showed off the campfire here. I don't know if I actually ever made a video of this. This thing actually works. I think I broke the GUI on it. Oh well, I'll fix that later. So let's see, go over to tab. So we got this. So I think I've shown a video of the C4 already. Crafting table is the thing I'm currently working on. It's a multi-block crafting table. You open it up, you've got things in here. You can put stuff in it, craft. If I put that last block in there. Crafting table works just like a normal crafting table. Inventory support's not implemented yet, something I still got to work on. Multi-block support is mostly working. Like if I hit the break on there, it drops items, and if I break it that way, on block added still needs to be fixed. So like if I actually closed the world and reloaded, this right multi-block would disappear. It's designed to actually disappear intentionally because of the fact that the multi-block code is meant to validate itself. So if you like say broke this and for some reason this didn't break with it, it would auto decay over time. And unfortunately, it's not setting up the multi-block structure on load again, which would automatically claim the multi-block next to it. And yeah, that's working. I don't know why this isn't working, which kind of makes me sad because this was actually fully functional. So this is actually supposed to work where you just kind of open it up. It's got a GUI and everything, but I wonder if I get some errors in the console. No errors, although I got some debug code I forgot to remove, where I was trying to check how many crafting recipes we had available for this table here. One thing to note with this though is I have not fixed this part yet. So like that would have made a furnace. This is actually a bug in the game, vanilla game itself. When Forge coded the recipes or made them functional so you could actually use them, they set up a maximum size of 3x3 for crafting grids because it was assumed that nobody else was going to add crafting grids, and you can't change that value. I actually went through and tried to change it. Wouldn't let me. There's a security manager that goes, hey, you're not allowed doing that. So if you actually end up using something like this, you have to craft your stuff like that. It's unfortunate. I do know an exact way to fix it, but if I go to fix it, I can only fix it on vanilla-ish like recipes. If a modded recipe comes in and they do their own thing, it won't work. There's a few other thoughts I've got to fix it. One of the thoughts is because how this works. When you do a recipe, when you place it in here, how the game actually does it is it figures out the width of the recipe and the height of the recipe, then goes, okay, what is my max width, what is my max height? And it'll check going down and the sides here of what can be fit in those grids. So this is a bad example here to use. Let's see if I can find something that's let's craft sticks with here. So if we do sticks, I mean, you know, if you stick it, oh, that's right, I got the stick recipe removed. If we do a button, you put this in here, you get a button. You put it in a different slot, you get a button. You put a different slot, you get a button. Put it out here, it's not going to work. Minecraft will actually take, and it'll know it's in a 3x3 grid, and it'll go, okay, if we know our recipe contains this, we need to validate our recipe, and it'll keep calling the validate method for each of these 9 grids until it finds a matching validation recipe. So if we put it here, it'll check first slot, next slot, next slot, next slot, and it'll go, oh, this configuration works. We're at this one, we know we only have a 1x1 and boom, we have a recipe validation. And it'll do is say like we had a recipe that was like say a 4 here, for example. It would try to do a 4x4 grid here, and it would move another 4x4 grid here, and it would move another 4x4 grid here, and then it will finally get to this final 4x4 grid, and it would go, hey, we have a valid recipe. The way I can fix this is to do that same exact thing, but instead of doing it the way Minecraft does it, because Minecraft goes, okay, we have a 3x3, and the easy fix would be to go, okay, we have a 4x4, and it would fix it automatically. I can make 4 3x3 grids in here and then pass it into Minecraft so that it'll go, hey, my recipe works now. And of course I can abstract it out to go, okay, if we had a 5x5 grid, now we need so many more 3x3s in order to make it valid. This is something functional I can do. When I actually wrote the code here for this, I had to fake out the inventory grid already. I can just fake it out again when I go to make it. If I actually go to the commission project here, content, crafting table. Surprisingly, all the crafting is done in the container class. So if we look down here, actually it's up here. So we have an inventory crafting here. Now, actually this is the wrong class. So inventory, yeah, here, inventory crafting matrix. I had to override inventory crafting. Inventory crafting, if we actually look at it, is a normal grid. It has recipe items in here. If you've noticed when you go to craft with your 3x3 crafting table by default, and you exit, and the items drop on the ground. The reason it does that is because it stores them in here, and when you call on close, which is down here somewhere. Yeah, no, it's actually, yeah, it's back in the container class, whatever. There's an on close method where it will dump everything out of that crafting grid. It stores it in the crafting grid temporarily. Since I actually have a built-in inventory that is static, that will always be there, I needed to actually take this and wrapper it. And it basically just goes, okay, here's our crafting table. Just go table that gets stacked from the slot from the table. And the table then has, I believe, 18 inventory slots and then 16 for the crafting grid and so on. And then your output slot is actually a fake slot. If I actually go back to the container slot, it's inventory crafting result, and that slot only exists as long as there is a output for it. If there's no output, then there's nothing actually there. And if you actually exit the grid, it disappears. When you open the grid up, it reappears. It's essentially a fake item. The only difference is when you go to pull it out, it'll actually create a real item, then put that in your inventory, and then you place that wherever you want to put it. Of course, there's a lot of other code that had to be duplicated over. I got the transfer stack. If the last video I made, I was going like, hey, I didn't know what the hell this did. I figured it out, at least if I can remember correctly. When this is called, it's asking where do you want to transfer the item from the slot we're currently at to whatever slot you want to go. So if we're at slot 0, which is our output slot, then we go, okay, I want to merge this slot into the start of the player inventory to the end of the player inventory. So these are the two the slot IDs you want to merge between. You can actually set these to, like, I believe this to be a whatever, like just some value, and this to be one larger, and you go, I only want to insert to one slot. And you do all that, and it just kind of works. I haven't fully explored it, but I figured out what it is because I've tested this code. This code works perfectly well. Like, this is like from player inventory to secondary inventory, from secondary to player, and then you have, of course, your last one, which is default. Everything goes to the player's inventory, and this is, of course, from the player to the or from the output to the player inventory. And there's no handling from going from anywhere to the crafting grid, because the crafting grid is actually designed so that way you only have like one of everything in there, then you kind of put everything into your secondary inventory. And I actually will be doing a way to lock down that recipe so that way you can't pull out the last one. But I don't know if I'll do that for the client's project unless he actually specifically asks for it. But I might do that for, say, if I make a crafting table for Volts Engine, which actually will happen eventually. Volts Engine is actually going to end up with its own custom crafting table designed to craft based off of a list-based system rather than a crafting grid-based system. Although there will be a crafting grid-based handling in it just for legacy support. But that's that. What else we got in here? I did work on some creative tabs here. By default, if the creative tab is missing, so like what it normally did, put a redstone block here, it'll now grab the first item it finds. In this case, it's grabbing those. I did work a little bit on the army mod, didn't do much with it. Most of the work lately has just been on getting the JSON content loading. I'll probably be working on that more over the week, and I will be working on my game as well. I started working on OpenGL stuff today. I'm actually been watching a tutorial here. It's on making Flappy Birds. It's hilarious that might be a sound. It doesn't matter how simplistic a game is that you're watching a tutorial for. It shows you the basic implementation of implementing something. In this case, I have no clue how to implement OpenGL from the basics. I know how to use OpenGL from like a Minecraft point of view, which I found out most of the stuff I know about Minecraft probably won't work in a 2D game because Minecraft uses a tessellator. Most 2D games do not always use a tessellator, so the way I have to implement it is different. It should work though. It also did work this morning. Let me find, by the way, this is all the LWGL libraries you have to have. There's tons of files in here just to make a game. I actually don't need most of these, but I downloaded them all. If we go to tabletop, actually, if I go to Google Drive, work, built broken, games, yeah, there's quite a few games we're actually trying to develop. This is the only one that's actually getting into the production phase. All the other ones are still in the design phase. Although this one probably should have sat in the design phase a little bit longer because we don't have everything for it yet. But I built some characters here. These look horrible when you consider the fact that I'm trying to make a nice quality game. These are just really quickly improvised for testing. I've got a green character and I've got a red one. So green will be your character, red will be the enemies. I'll probably do like a shading randomization on it when I figure out how to do that in OpenGL so they look slightly different. And there'll be some kind of like underlay system, like you'll have like a blue circle under the one saying this is you, then you might have like a green circle under your other guys to say these are allies, and you'll command them around and stuff. And of course the game I'm producing, so if you don't haven't figured out yet, I'm doing a Dungeons & Dragons like RPG style game. So it's a tabletop after all. The game is called tabletop. My buddy Grogger built up this entire rule book to play a tabletop game based on the mod pack Shadow Chapter, or at least the original concept of Shadow Chapter, because after all, the mod pack was created over repeatedly and it had nothing to do with the story. But the story is you've got a planet, the planet's pretty much dying, you've got a whole bunch of alien races. One of the alien races are assholes and want to kill everybody. Well, actually, technically, they don't want to kill everybody, they want to... They're pretty much industrial tycoon type people that have no understanding of life. They just kind of do things, and those things result in bad things happening. Eventually results in the planet dying, and the planet fights back and murders everybody. But the game, you kind of escape from that planet, but that's just one of the campaigns that's going to be made, and I'll probably explain it more in detail when I'm not half asleep trying to make a recording. Because there's going to be, I think when we make the final game, when we go to release it to Steam, we're going to have at least 5 main campaigns in the release, maybe more, maybe less. I still haven't figured that one out. The game is going to be designed to be more of a GM's toolkit. So a game master is going to design campaigns, then players are going to play them. It's going to be multiplayer based, so you'll have clients that will connect to a server. That server will then be controlled by a game master. That game master will then do whatever he wants. He'll spawn enemies, create levels, whatever. So there will be a workshop for it, so you can download maps, weapons, content, whatever. It will be modded supported from out of the box, so you'll be able to build up plugins to add more content to the game. Almost all the content is going to be JSON driven. That's another reason why I'm working on the JSON system in Minecraft, is that all that code is going to be ported over to the game production eventually. And that's going to allow me to do all of this stuff through JSON, and when I go to release the game, people who are already familiar with modding could just go, okay, I want to take my gun from Minecraft, port it right over to the game, and then you have the gun in the game, and then you can shoot around with people and stuff, various, etc., etc. But that's the end of the video because I'm just kind of rambling on at this point. I'll try to make more of these videos as I go. I'll try to get some more development videos out. I haven't been doing them lately because I've been waking up at pretty much midnight. Which means my ability to record is diminished because once you get past like 9 o'clock, it's need to be quiet so I'm not waking up people. But yeah, more videos later, and that's the end. I'll see you guys.